Welcome back, Mom Betches. Today, we are dishing it on the real, the raw, the unfiltered side of motherhood. And who better than to have this conversation than Dr. Rebekah Diamond, MD. She is a pediatrician, and she has wrote a book, Parent Like a Pediatrician. So if you've ever wondered the secrets that pediatricians have up their sleeve when it comes to raising healthy, happy kids, well, we got ya. We are talking about the first 12 years, and she is writing a book for toddlers. So we are going to be equipped with tantrums, picky eaters. We have endless questions for her, and she is spilling the tea. So please, please, please settle in, grab your juice. We're about to begin.
Women need to empower women, and our voice matters.
Bitch.
Welcome to the Mom Bitch Podcast.
This episode of the Mom Bitch Podcast is brought to you by BTRNation.com. Hey there, amazing mamas. Are you ready to spice up your snacking routine and add a dash of fun to your day? Get ready to rock your taste buds with BTR Nation. Imagine this. You are juggling a million mom tasks and suddenly hunger strikes. But fear not, because BTR Nation is here to save the day. If you go to BTRNation.com right now, you can actually take a snack quiz. It is the coolest way to discover snacks that will make your mama heart sing. Are you fruity, chocolate, nutty, or maybe you're a combination of all of them like me? All you do is answer a few questions and voila, your snack perfection awaits. From protein-packed bars to guilt-free truffle cups and energizing boosting bites, BTR Nation has got everything a mama could dream of. And guess what? BTR Nation snacks are crafted with clean, wholesome ingredients, ensuring you snack like a mom boss and feel fantastic while taking on the world. Plus, did you know BTR Nation recently earned a spot on Forbes' list of 7 food and beverage brands positively impacting our planet and health, with low sugar, low carb, low sodium, high protein, high fiber. So what are you waiting for? Head over to btrnation.com and enjoy, because we get 20% off and free shipping with code MOMBETCH. That's 20% off and free shipping with code MOMBETCH. We are so excited today because we have the bright, the brilliant, the beautiful Dr. Rebekah Diamond. Do not roll your eyes at me. She is the author of Parent Like a Pediatrician. I just have to ask, what was it like just personally? Like, take the medical out of it, take the school out of it. What was it like for you to write your first book?
Well, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I don't know how to separate everything. This book is, so much a part of me and my parenting and my doctoring, and it's all very connected. But what was it like to write my first book? It's funny you ask that off the bat. I sometimes forget what an accomplishment it is, because you know how it is as moms and women in general. We're sort of always putting ourselves down or sort of minimizing things. And every once in a while, and we're resetting the bar, we have to do this thing, the other thing. Every once in a while, I have to remind myself, like, I did the thing I wanted to do. It would be great to feel really good about that. So it's, a work in progress of letting myself actually celebrate things, but it's amazing. It's really great that luck and circumstance and hard work and everything kind of came together. So I'm thrilled.
You've wrote for a lot of publications. So do you want to give us a little background of where you went to school, some of the publications you wrote for? I mean, you're really passionate out there. I when I was looking for a pediatrician, obviously you Google, right? You Google your healthcare systems. But for you, I Googled you and there was so many things popped up. So I'm like, okay, you've gone above and beyond what most pediatricians do. And I feel like the audience really would like to know, who is Dr. Rebekah Diamond?
Yeah. I'd love to share my journey. It's kind of a long one, but here's my shortish take on everything. I went to medical school just like everyone else, and I was in New York City for that. And then I went and did my residency at Michigan, in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. And, residency is really intense. Pediatrics is a little kinder, but it's still it's quite an intense time. But I became really passionate about a lot of different things. There was a lot of frustration I had with the healthcare system and just the the parenting system in general. I got very passionate around vaccine advocacy, which ends up being something I talk about a lot in my book and on my Instagram and through my writing. I started out just being really angry that kids weren't being vaccinated, and not really understanding the full scope of the issue, but wanting to write about that, wanting to somehow move the needle. And then I became involved in some other kind of child advocacy topics in writing. But everything sort of shifted in terms of how I try to get my voice out there when I had my daughter. And so that's, or my oldest, I now have two. I'm pretty immediately postpartum now, just a few months. So I remember them both and I love them both, but it all started with my eldest, who I had during residency. And it was just brutal. I think it will surprise no one that having a child can, in America is kind of brutal for everyone. But I felt like even with all my privilege, even with everything that I had, it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. The pregnancy was harder. The postpartum was harder. The parenting advice was confusing, even from my own peers, and then mixed with the internet. It was just a mess. And so I started doing writing that shared more about that, did a little more personal writing about pregnancy and postpartum, and sort of decided that my advocacy would take a slightly different shape, which is more working with parents and trying to give them some of the guidance I wish that I had, some of the realistic but still scientific support that I wish I had, which turned into, through the many, many years, into sort of essentially the books I'm writing and then the online platforms that go with them. So it's been a roller coaster. But what I do is deeply personal to me. It always has been. And it's really it's just about parents and how can we help parents, because there's, in pediatrics, it can feel like we're just there for the kid, or that we're there to learn about childhood health and child's, bodies and physiology. And that's important, but nothing matters if it's not something that can be, provided for by a parent. Nothing can happen if a parent isn't well and cared for and able to really love and nurture their kids. So it's been a long time for me to get to this point of saying, I really want to support childhood health by supporting parents and their empowerment and their health too. So a long way to tell you who I am, but that's more or less what I do.
So I read the entire book front to back. I'm not a reader. This is facts. I really enjoyed the book, but the one thing that I took away the most, being completely non-medical, a brand new mom, is how you said your journey as a doctor has changed now that you're a mother. What's it been like doing that transition from like residency, pre-family, to now you're a mom yourself, and now you kind of can, I'm sure, empathize more with what women go through?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for reading the whole book and saying that about it. It really is, that is the core of the book. And what I do is how being a parent informs how I act like a pediatrician. In addition to how being a pediatrician informs how I parent, of course, there's the scientific background, there's the kind of understanding which things really matter and which things really don't. But you don't really understand any of that until you're a parent yourself. And that's what I learned, had a very, very rough postpartum crash course in realizing like, oh my goodness, I can't do all of these things. There's no way you could ever do anything on a checklist. It's not possible. There's the pediatrician checklist. You can't do everything perfectly on that. Not even pediatricians. I certainly couldn't. There's the online checklists. Some of them are good. Some of them are pseudoscience. Some of them are misinformation. You can't do everything. And so there's this constant feeling, or at least for me, there was this constant feeling of failure postpartum, and just a total erosion of confidence. And I was, talking to my friends and my peers, and it wasn't just me. It may not be you listening to this. Hopefully you have some confidence by now and you feel a sense of empowerment. But, compared to what I thought it would be, or how things, quote unquote, used to be in the good old days, I think parents really are being set up to feel less than kind of constantly. And there's no reason that we need to be in that spot. We can have good scientific guidance, but we can also have realistic expectations. And we can also have parents not being told to buy this and do that and feel bad about yourself. It is all possible. I know it. Obviously there's privilege and circumstance and things that make it easier or harder. But the degree of difficulty is pretty artificial. And I think it's people trying to sell you on products or ideas, or even pediatricians sometimes giving unrealistic expectations because we think that's the best, that's the conventional wisdom, is tell parents what, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the perfect black and white things you have to do is, and then they can do it. Well, that's just not true. I completely changed how I talk to families after I had a kid. Countless examples of, like I was talking about with vaccines, my conversation changed completely. I still think they're just as important and just as safe. And I have just as much knowledge. I actually have much more scientific knowledge about it now, but I'm able to understand what parents are up against and how they're being told a million different things about vaccines, about other things, and they may be led one way or another. So I'm just able to meet parents where they are in a different way. Being a pediatrician is so connected to parenting and parenting guidance. And you really don't realize how little you know until you're in it. It's very humbling, as I'm sure so many people can attest to. But I think the biggest change for me was seeing how even my best intentioned guidance, even if it was right on paper and scientific and, by the book, how it maybe wasn't landing the way I wanted to because I wasn't really meeting parents where they were.
Yeah.
And I felt that because I wasn't always being met where I was, needed to be. I was being told to do certain things a certain way or what was the absolute safest thing. But that's a recommendation in a vacuum. That's not something that is being tailored to me and my situation. And I just totally became a different type of doctor where all I do is look at the risk and benefits of a situation. And it's for you in that specific moment and in that specific situation, which means there's always going to be a range of options and choices, even in medicine. It's what I teach my residents, and it's what I, try to practice in medicine too. And that means in parenting, every choice that you make, there's a good chance there isn't one right answer. And so when I would see parenting guidance, that even some of the better parenting guidance that would make it seem like you have to say this in this situation, or you can only do that, or you have to follow this for your safe sleep guidance. It felt like, okay, I could see how maybe 90% of the time that's great, but what about the 10% when it isn't?
Mm-hmm.
I want those parents to feel like they still have choices, and I don't want them to feel like, well, that didn't work for me, so maybe I should just go to the internet and find something crazy,
I think it's important to have a safe space with your doctor because it's kind of like when you're a kid, like if you're doing a no-no, then you're not going to open up to that person, right? Like you're going to feel a little bit more hesitant because you're going to feel like you're judged. So I think that's great. Okay. So I have a quick random question before we dive more into the book. How does a pediatrician pick out a pediatrician?
It's funny because what I realized pretty quickly into my pediatrician searches, and we moved a few times, in the past few years. So I've had to do this a few times just because of moving. I realized it was about finding someone for me. It was about a fit with my style. Someone who, in my specific case, wouldn't defer to me too much, wouldn't say, wouldn't let me be bossy, would feel comfortable saying, okay, no, we need to do this test because why, or I know it feels like you don't, you're really anxious about this because you work in the hospital and you see kids get really sick, but that it's not this because of that. I needed a specific type of hand holding. And I also just, basic competencies like, knowing that they were on board with just general good medical counseling, had an office that promoted vaccines and promoted general hygiene, like some basic boxes to check. But other than that, it's very stylistic, and it's about finding a good fit, I think.
Yeah, I think that's important. I don't know about you guys, but I went online and I actually, like, the healthcare systems had videos of every pediatrician, and they talked about themselves. And I found the pediatrician that I really vibed with. Like, it just felt really good energy, and I don't regret it. Like, I met her. She's been amazing for me, and she's been vulnerable with me to, like, I'm like, what do you do with your kids? Like, I'm not going to make a decision off that, but I kind of want to know. Like, she'll actually tell me. That's been really cool. The cool thing about your book, so Parent Like a Pediatrician, guys, it is for the first year. And it was really cool because every chapter was very clear. It was outlined in a very good way. And you also had at the end of each chapter a recap of tips, which I thought was really important because say you read the book, you might not memorize everything, right? Or it might be hard to be like, what part of that chapter did I read this from? It was so cool to see that those main hitting points you had at the end of each chapter for easy reference in the future for moms that are just going through that first year. That's game changer. Not all books do that.
Yeah. I mean, user friendliness is key. That first year is a battlefield. We have to try to make this easier. And I really did set out to it was a very therapeutic journey, this book writing, because I was like, what did I need that I couldn't find that first year? What kind of guidance? How did I want it presented to me? How did I want it accessible, and explained? And I wish someone had given me permission to do this, or I wish someone had told me, well, there's actually not that much data behind that, or, so I really wrote the guide that I wanted to have had. And so it's so great to hear that it is accessible, because that's kind of all I want is for parents to have things, even if you have things just a fraction easier, just marginally easier that first year. That's where everything is so hard that first year.
It is. It literally is. Okay, so I'm going to go into a couple topics that are in the book. They may be non-controversial because we are a Mom Veg podcast, so we play unbiasedness. But the one thing in your book that I feel like should be not unbiased is fragrance-free products and marketing tricks. You must see this way more than the average person because you have so many parents and children and this and that coming through your doors. But I'm in full alignment, so maybe it is biased. But fragrance-free, not just for the products you're putting on your children, but the products you're putting on yourself because of skin to skin. Do you have any recommendations when it comes to like how you look at a label on these type of products?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. That's the one you pick. Usually when we're talking about all sorts of like, well, you said it wasn't one of the hot button ones. Oh my gosh, there's some doozies in there. But in terms of picking products, I am lucky. I have, access to dermatologists and pediatric dermatologist friends. My best friend from med school, she's a pediatric dermatologist. So I can't tell you how many times, even as a pediatrician, I'm texting her being like, what do you think of this? But there's a few brands you can sort of trust to be pretty gentle and not have a ton of fragrances or different alcohols or different additives that can be irritating. It's funny, like you said, with marketing, it's not always what you think it is. I've seen ads on Instagram or products in like wellness spaces that they say they're for eczema and sensitive skin, and they look so lovely and leafy green. And then you look at them and they have crazy things in them that are super irritating. So yeah, there's some basic brands and general types of things that pediatricians tend to like, but it's kind of, I guess, simple is almost always best. And sometimes that means just putting nothing on. Baby skin is pretty clean and pretty nice. So really like a super gentle cleanser is usually good for most babies. Most babies, unless they have like particularly dry skin or eczema, they don't need moisturizers. I don't own a baby lotion. I've never used one. Sometimes you can do Vaseline, like really simple, just pure Vaseline on dry skin. But yeah, your pediatrician should feel these are some pretty standard pediatric tricks. So as always, this is a good one to go to your pediatrician with and skip the social media ads for sure.
That's good to know, because I feel like when you're in a pediatrician's office, it's usually like you're totally in sync of what's happening. Like your kid's, getting checked out, you're doing all of these things that you sometimes forget, like unless you make a list ahead of time. But even so, you forget to ask some of those simple things. I always want to repeat, even though it's the simplest and it should be one of the easiest things for every mom to not feel guilt, but we do. It's like internally inside of us, breastfeeding.
Yeah.
You get really personal with your experience. And I love that you address the guilt associated with feeding choices.
Yeah. This is a huge passion project of mine. Like I have a reputation for, if I'm on service, like, kind of like in Grey's Anatomy when there's the doctors and the residents and everyone's rounding in the hospital. It's a little bit what my days are like, a little less steamy, but it's a similar structure. And when I'm rounding with the residents and they know I'm going to be on service, there's sort of this reputation. They're like, okay, Dr. Diamond's on. Like everyone needs to know if the baby is breastfeeding or not. And they need to know if there's a pump and if the mom wants to talk about it and if they need counseling. And because I just have developed this real passion for, again, feeding choices, not just feeding choices and discussion about breast versus formula, but feeding empowerment, helping new parents decide what matters to them. How do we get the right amount of breast milk to you? The right amount for me is not the same as the right amount for you, because like we were talking about with risk and benefit, you may have more of harms from breastfeeding. Like when with my first daughter, for example, I did not produce as much as I wanted to. Which was related to some bad setup early on. I was exclusive pumping with supplementation. So I had no latch, no at the breastfeeding. I had horrible postpartum anxiety. It was a bad idea, honestly, in retrospect, for me to pump as long as I did. The amount of breast milk I was giving her in no way was worth the effort and the pain I was going through. Versus this time around, I'm actually almost 4 months out and I'm exclusive breastfeeding. And it's been really joyful for me.
That's awesome.
Because of how I framed it and because of some circumstance. I had different parental leave than I had last time. I had a good latch with my daughter. I have an okay supply. I put less pressure on myself with a lot of therapy and help to realize that it wasn't the end of the world if it didn't work out. And I was going to do it for as long as I could. And it was just, to me, in my N of one experiment, but it was night and day when we actually take a holistic look and say, okay, it's not breast is best. It's not fed is best. It's not breast milk. Or formula. It's not, it's not, okay, this is what's best for the baby. Who cares about the mom? It's all of these things at once. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of pediatricians don't have the training they need to be able to make that assessment and give that counseling. Moms don't have the support they need in terms of time off work or even just postpartum support in general. Lactation counseling. Some lactation counseling is excellent. I work with some amazing lactation counselors, but some lactation counseling is still focused on just breast, maximizing the amount of breast milk. So it's kind of a mess out there. And at the end of the day, if we could just like shoosh, all that noise, make it go away and realize the goal is to get the amount of breast milk that is the most and best for you in your situation. Let's figure out how to support that. Then I think 90% of these problems or more would go away.
I know. I agree.
You're also an advocate for pumping in the workplace. And I saw you posted about that, which I really appreciated because I got a lot of heat when I went back to work. I work in the OR, I'm an anesthetist, and someone has to get me out so I can go pump. And, a lot of my coworkers would roll their eyes or delay or be like, really, you needed 40 minutes?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I did. I'm feeding a human. What do you do?
Yeah.
But that's such a, and that's such a huge part of the picture, just our attitudes towards, okay, you have to give breast milk to babies, but I'm not going to support you in doing it. Even from our own profession, it's like, I'm sorry, what? What you're saying is you don't want women to have control of their bodies, and you don't want women to feel welcome at work, and you don't want to support moms. Like, kind of say what you're saying, say it out loud.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get really heated about that too. I'm sorry you had to deal with that.
We made it. I did it for a whole year. Whatever.
Well, that's
Good
amazing.
for you.
Roll your eyes all you want, bro. I'm still gonna,
Yeah.
gonna get out.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Make Mementos, the perfect way to keep your loved ones close no matter where life takes you. If you're like me, you are constantly juggling work, school runs, trying to keep up with family across the country, sometimes even miles away. Well, I've got something incredible to share with you today. It's called Make Mementos, and it's about to revolutionize the way you connect with your loved ones. Picture this: grandma, grandpa, they're living their best life in Florida. Wouldn't it be amazing for them to send your little one something that truly makes them feel close? Make Mementos lets you record personalized ebooks and e-cards using your own voice and send them instantly to anyone, anywhere. And it's not just for grandparents. Whether you're a military parent stationed overseas, or just want to share a special moment with your best friend's new baby, or even record your child reading their first book to save that memory forever, Make Mementos is the perfect way to make every occasion memorable. And here is the best part: there's no shipping involved. No complicated video chats to schedule. Just record your message, hit send, and let Make Memento work its magic. And for the entire month of May, Make Mementos has given us 15% off a recordable ebook or e-card with the code MOMLOVE24. That's MOMLOVE24 for 15% off a recordable ebook or e-card, and expires on May 31st at midnight Eastern Standard Time. So what are you waiting for? Head over to makemementos.com today and start spreading love and joy with the power of your voice. Make every moment count with Make Mementos.
I was only able to do it for 8 weeks, and this might be...
That's amazing. Congratulations, because that's a lot.
8 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. I thought 8 weeks was really good. I was pumping. I was breastfeeding. I was not producing as well enough. And I remember it was so bad for my mental health. I remember this one time, and this might be quasi funny looking back now, but I was so stressed because I wanted to retain as much milk as possible for Lakin. And nobody tells you that when you go to the shower, the second you walk out of the shower, you are just drenched. You never feel clean. Okay. If you haven't had a baby yet, know this. Okay. You are never clean. It is the worst feeling ever. But I broke down getting out of the shower because I felt so guilty that I didn't have something every single time for whatever reason to like catch every single drop of milk that was coming out of my body. And it just took me to such a dark, scary, like vulnerable place where I was like, I just can't do it. Like my personality can't withhold what is about to come. I just have to switch to formula because that's what's going to be best for me. And Lakin is just fine.
Right.
And so I think it's great that all three of us share our stories, because no matter what, I don't know if it's like, is it like environmental, social? Like, I don't know, but I felt so guilty. And I read so many things, and I've had so many people say, don't feel guilty, but you still do.
Right.
It's weird.
Well, it's more than any one thing, you know, the messaging is really insidious. It's really complex, and that drive to just bring every ounce of your body for your child to protect them. There's just this messaging that will somehow help. Of course, you'd give your arm for your child, you know, if you were told it could benefit them, but the reality is much more complicated, and we can't live in a world where I am saying personally, not you cry when you get out of the shower. I cry I was crying when I got out of the shower too. I mean, if an ounce of breast milk, especially with my daughter the first time, was wasted, I literally was crying. That was triggering my postpartum depression if it got left out for too long. 1 ounce, you know, in the grand scheme of the hundreds and hundreds of ounces she was taking, you know, each week. So it just became this this ridiculous pressure that was so internalized, it didn't really matter what people said on the outside, but it starts with the outside. And we need to realize as people in this space, in the parenting and pediatric space, how what we're putting out there can contribute positively or negatively to that. And so I hope that, in addition to parents seeing the advice that I'm giving and having a better perspective, I hope that pediatricians and trainees and people will take a moment to kind of interrogate how we do this black or white, this all or none when it comes to breastfeeding, and realize this is a really complicated topic that deserves a lot of really thoughtful attention.
100%. And a lot of hospitals, not to like prolong this, but a lot of hospitals are not prepared for you to do anything but breastfeed. My hospital it was a beautiful hospital. I had a very great experience, but I knew going in that there wasn't the option for me to pump.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't the option for that. Like, they basically like hound you to do one thing, and that's fine, I guess. In my situation, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks anyways. What else am I going to do? But like, that's not okay. If I want to show up to the hospital with a pump, back off. Okay. This isn't your body. This isn't your baby. Yeah. Like, we got to be empathetic.
Yeah. There's it's a great example of, and this is why my breastfeeding chapter in part is so long. It's not just, it does give you great tips and tricks and does say that breastfeeding ultimately is something worth trying, but it gives a very long background about the medical establishment's very complicated relationship with breastfeeding. And I think it's important to know, because a lot of medicine, unfortunately, is very reactive. We are reacting to our own mistakes, and the pendulum almost always swings too far one way or another. And so the medical establishment was very anti-breastfeeding and very pro-formula for a long time in very complicated, profit-driven ways. And then obviously science showed, well, breastfeeding can be great. Can is a key word, but it can have really tremendous benefits that often make it worthwhile. And we should not be pushing formula, as a blanket statement. It should be used in an appropriate way for medical indications and for empowering moms in different situations. There's a variety of ways in which it needs to be used, but it needs to be more careful and thoughtful. But that's not really how the message came. It became very much all or none in the other direction. Breast is best. And that got co-opted by different groups and different, interests. So it's very complicated, like you say, but the hospital policies I find very frustrating, and I struggle with them a lot. I felt the opposite. I felt almost not supported enough in breastfeeding in my second birth. And I was sort of surprised. I was like, really? You guys aren't going to pressure me to breastfeed?
They were like, girl, this is your second. We don't care.
I had expressed colostrum, and I had a whole plan. And they were like, if anything, they were like, you want to supplement? You want some formula? And I was like, no, go away. I'm ready for this. I know the plan. So it sort of just, to me, goes to show any one size fits all policy. It's just, we do want to standardize things. I'm sure, as you know, in the OR, standardization is key. Improving patient outcomes, checklists matter. These things are helpful, but they have limits. We have to be flexible.
Okay. I don't know if you want to get into this, and I don't think we have to go super deep because I don't want to give everything away, right? But one chapter really got me amped. Purple. And I don't think we go into it too in depth, but I never heard of this before. And so when I read it, I was like, oh, this is cool. We got to talk about it. At least tell us what purple means. I might be saying this the wrong way. But then everyone's got to buy the book if you want to read more about it.
If you're talking about purple crying,
yes,
which I didn't know about till I was a pediatrician, and thank God I did. That was one of the few things I was sort of prepared for a little bit with my first. It's kind of the newer way to describing colic, which has a lot of different definitions. But sometimes people are like, oh, they're just a really fussy baby. They have colic, and this is just a way of making it, we're talking about standardizing the definition. But I found it really helpful. It's an acronym. And if this is a quiz, I'll fail because I don't remember what they each of them stands for, but some of the main ones are that it usually happens in the evening. It tends to be kind of unpredictable, doesn't seem triggered by anything. It can last and they can seem unconsolable, and a few other things that help you understand if your baby maybe has colic, which is a very benign, not dangerous thing, but my goodness, is it a pain in the ass to deal with. So it's good to know because there are tips and tricks for how to deal with it and how to work with your pediatrician to maybe make it not so miserable.
Yeah, it was a really interesting chapter. Just not only like the journey, right? Like to find, like, say you're breastfeeding, but say you're not, right? And maybe your child is fussy because they just don't like the formula and we don't know it and they can't tell us. Like the chapter was really cool because it kind of went into some really nice take and go information. Like you said, you could go and take to your pediatrician. And I also wrote down here too, the piece about supporting parents through these challenging times. Like, I think it's important to tell the audience, like, pick up the phone and call your pediatrician, call the nurse line. Like, I feel like a lot of times, like, we in the moment just start searching Google. Like, no, like, find the path of least resistance. Like, just pick up the phone and call and see. And maybe they'll give you a resource or they'll give you a document. Like, I used MyChart. I don't know if everyone has that, but I MyChart everything. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just so much easier for me to use that than to go online. And I notice a lot of people when I'm with them, they just tend to go online and I'm like, oh, I don't know if you want to do that.
No, it's tough and it's hard not to. And I mean, that is in a really huge way, a big reason I wrote this book, because you do want to go to your pediatrician with all your questions, but sometimes you might have a question where you're like, I just want sort of reputable general knowledge about it, or I want to know what I'm going to ask them. I want to know what the range of options could be that I'm going to think about. And pediatricians, gosh, we do wish we had more time. Like, there's nothing I would like more than for every parent to have an on-call, constant, like pediatrician best friend who they can, like my best friends do, text every single question to all the time. But, short of having that, I think if you do pick up my book or go find me on Instagram, I do try to share general, reputable kind of range of topics and options so that you're waiting for that call back, or, it's not an emergency, but you really want to know, okay, like, could this be reflux, or what should I ask to figure out if it's reflux? Does reflux even need to be treated? Should I get all worried about it? Hopefully you'll have some of that background so you feel a little more confident going into those questions.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a great starting point to read, ahead of time. And, sometimes these books, it's like, what to expect when you're expecting? James read it all. I didn't read a single page. That book was way too thick for me. I was like, you do you, boo, but I can't do it. But I read your book now, but it was like after a year. I would have read your book and probably really appreciated these like quick tips and tricks in a lot smaller of a format. I mean, your book, it talks about screen time balance. We talk about simplifying infant wellness and natural, remedies. And also too, like a big chapter that I really liked was handling sick babies. And I have a question that I genuinely want to know, and I still don't know the answer to this. And Cammie, you probably already know this answer, but when do you wake a sleeping baby? Like, if your baby has a fever, and I say this because people ask me this a lot too. If your baby has a fever, but they're sleeping. So say like Lakin has 100, like he's an infant, right? Mm-hmm. And he has that 102 fever. That's when that 102 fever is primarily more dangerous, right? Before, what is it, like 6 months or more? Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But regardless, your baby has a fever. You give it Tylenol or Motrin. They go to bed. As a parent, or maybe it was just me, I'm still checking my child's forehead when it runs out and the fever's still there. Do you let the baby sleep, or do you wake the baby up and give them more medicine?
That is a layered question. I love it. But the first thing I'm hearing, which I can relate to, is just like, gosh, when your kid is sick, that level of understandable anxiety. But to me, the anxiety is always like, oh, could something really bad happen? Could this get worse? And the biggest thing I say, we will talk about, and you'll talk with your pediatrician about some signs of when you need to go in, like when a fever is lasting a certain amount of time, or when breathing is affected, or if your kid is like super, what we call lethargic, which means not just like sleepy, but like really can't get up, isn't waking up to eat, things like being really, really irritable, meaning like can never stop crying. There's a lot of different signs that you go through of when you sort of need to escalate things. But other than that, I'm a big fan of intuition. Not intuition like anxiety, panic, but intuition of like, if you feel like your kid is unwell, like bring them in, let us take a look at them. If you think it's an emergency, it's an emergency. Bring them to the emergency room. Fevers are one of those things that I go through a little bit online, especially about, there's a little bit of a myth around fevers too, that when they get super high, it's really dangerous. Kids can have fevers to like 104 and be totally fine. But like you said, with the age cutoff, for the first 2 months of life, a fever is an emergency in a baby, just because we have to make sure it's not a bacterial infection.
It's good to know.
And I go through that a little bit in the sick chapter, just to try to give parents a little bit of framework, not of in each specific situation, what your pediatrician will say, but just kind of the general framework of when you might be going to the hospital versus when you might be going to the doctor's office versus maybe staying at home. I don't really wake kids up who have fevers and are sleeping comfortably. They're actually not that dangerous. In general, I try not to wake sleeping babies because I'm a fan of sleep begets sleep. But of course, if it's really excessive or you can't wake a kid up, that could be a sign of something serious. Otherwise, though, fevers and sleep are kind of common.
See, this is good to know. And it's funny because you're a pediatrician, right? You're a anesthetist. That to you guys is like, duh. Like, honestly, like we were on a cruise and, Cammie's daughter had a fever and I was like, oh, like, do you get a temperature? She's like, no, I don't got one. My sister's the same way. She's an anesthesiologist. I'm like, oh, did you take the temperature? No, they're fine. And I'm like, this is only medical people, because every other mom, if you're listening, you're like, what's the temperature? This or that, blah, blah, blah. And then your spouse is like, here, we got to go. We got to check this again. Should we wake them up? This or that. And then you're just like hoarding this poor child that's sleeping peacefully. And have I been a victim? Have I been guilty of waking up a sleeping baby? Yes. And the reason why I ask is because I learned, long story short, that you didn't have to. And I wasted a lot of peaceful nights probably being overly conscious of something that was fine, because I got crazy. So I just wanted other moms to know that, like, if you're going through this and you're not in the medical field, it's okay. Dr. Rebekah's got us.
The perspective is so different when we're in the medical field. I think in some ways we worry more about a lot of things, a lot of rare, crazy things.
We're the worst patients, that's for sure.
Well, I'm actually truly, truly terrible, but that's a different conversation. But sometimes some things we have the perspective on that we kind of know it's not that big a deal. It's very variable. But what you went through, and that is so common, and that's okay. Yeah. I would love to, I hope people can have minimal anxiety and not worry unnecessarily. But if you were a little extra at some point, we've all been there.
Yeah, we just care. Okay. So because this is a podcast, before we wrap this episode and do a closing on Parent Like a Pediatrician, you have another book coming out, which we're going to talk about here in a second. I have come up with some fun questions to ask you, because I feel like I might even bring this to my pediatrician the next time I see her just to see how she reacts. But if babies could talk from birth, like you're in the hospital, you're a baby, you were just born, what do you think they'd say?
Oh my God, babies are so, as frustrating as they are and complicated as they seem, they're so simple. They would just be like, I'm hungry. My belly hurts. I'm hungry. I have to poop. I just pooped. I'm hungry. I'm tired. There's like 3 things babies can do and think about. It's really primitive, like their reflexes and their cognitive ability. And honestly, that can be liberating to parents, because what it means is there's probably like 1 of 3 things that's ever wrong with a baby. You will learn what it is most likely with them, but you can try, you change them, you burp them, you feed them, you put them down to sleep. One of those things will work, or you hold them. They probably would say, hold me.
Yeah. Hold me, mommy. Okay. What is the most creative thing you've ever seen or heard a parent do when giving their child a shot?
Like, for like vaccine appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I mean, parents go through all sorts of songs and dance. And I saw someone blow bubbles, which I thought was very cute.
That's a good idea.
I'm a fan of keeping it simple. Not that it's, not the other things aren't fine, but, you put them in your lap if they're small enough and you tell them the truth that it's going to hurt quickly, but then it won't. And then I love giving for little babies, especially I do like a nursing or a bottle afterwards to soothe them.
Yeah.
And then giving some sort of toy or prize is totally fine.
Okay. What is the funniest thing a child has ever told you during an examination?
Oh my gosh. The funniest thing a child has ever told me. Kids are just...
They say the darndest things.
They say the darndest things. They will diagnose themselves all the time.
Really?
Yeah. They'll tell me, I take care of kids in the hospital. So they'll know how to do the whole exam and they'll like do it alongside me.
Oh.
They'll sometimes they'll ask me how their wheezing is, how their asthma's doing. So I don't know if it's the funniest, but I'm always just so impressed.
Yeah.
They kind of are just way smarter and savvier than we realize. So I just love everything they say.
If you could swap roles with a child for a day, what's the first thing you would do?
Oh my God, go to sleep. All they do is fight it. And I would just go to be like,
right? Isn't that insane? The amount of resources and energy they waste.
7:30 bedtime, please. And then eat some of that. I mean, I already eat like a child, but like mac and cheese, PB&J, like Dunkaroos, go to bed. That's it.
Well, I think that like your book was absolutely phenomenal, right? Like I think the book really emphasized a really well-balanced approach to infant wellness. And there's tips and tricks, whether it's your firstborn, secondborn, like you can really pick it up and utilize it as a resourceful resource. I'm really excited though, because you have a new book coming out this year. It's called Eat, Sleep, Tantrum, Repeat. Can you give us a little explanation of what we should expect?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my sequel, not strictly speaking, but it's very much in conversation with the first book, meaning it is the same realistic scientific guidance, but we're going to do it for toddlers because it turns out there's still a lot to learn and still a lot to deal with. They're a handful. So I actually realized as I was writing the second book how little there was. There's a lot of toddler books about specific issues, but I didn't see any books out there that sort of gave you this one-stop shop of like, okay, give me the TLDR on toilet training and on tantrums. And I don't need a whole book on sleep training and sleep regressions, but I would like a little bit of help, and I want the basics of it. And then, even some other things like going outside to play. What do I need to be thinking about? Someone is telling me I should worry about the chemicals in my sunscreen. Is that true? Like all sorts of nonsense out there that we can go through pretty quickly and efficiently, and also in a fun way. I share all my toddler drama, just like I shared all my baby drama. So that's the gist of it. I'm really excited. It'll be out this fall in September.
That's really exciting. On that note, before we wrap, you're going back to work soon, right? Like you just had your second baby. You're going back to work. Do you have any advice to send us off? Because it is the saddest time when you have to be like, oh, my maternity leave. And we're fighting for everyone to get maternity leave, FYI, if you're listening. But do you have any good advice to the mamas out there that are going through that transition?
I'll just add supportive vibes more than anything. Just know I'm right there with you. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel excited. It's whatever you're feeling is okay. It's okay to feel lots of different things at the same time. And ultimately, whatever you do, put yourself first, because I'm a pediatrician and I'm supposed to technically not even care about you and just care about your kid. And I will tell you the best way to take care of your kid is to take care of yourself. So pediatrician giving you permission or giving you directions to really focus on doing the thing that makes you feel good as a parent and as a person.
Well, you have it, guys. Pick up the book, Parent Like a Pediatrician, Dr. Rebekah Diamond. We will put all of her information in the description of this podcast. And we are so hopeful to have you back for your new book this fall, because we are going to be in Central Toddler Zone, all of us together. So I'm sure it will be a really fun conversation, but we appreciate you coming on the podcast so much, taking the time. And then honestly, just being another woman in this world that wants to support other women. The more we can do it, the more we can get that messaging out there and those resources. We are saving so many women's lives by just taking the time to lean in. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Until next time.
Women need to empower women, and our voice matters. Bitch.